Bud Not Buddy, Chapter 7. In this chapter, you're going to encounter the word retrieve. When you retrieve something, you get it and you bring it back. There are dogs that are called retrievers. You probably know about golden retrievers. They're called that because they have a golden color to their fur and they're good at retrieving things, at getting them and bringing them back. These days it's sticks and balls, but some people still use them to hunt, and they may retrieve hunted animals. As we're reading through here, make sure you're thinking about stop, think, paraphrase, so you can make sure you're really understanding what you are reading. Remember, we're going to stop at the end of a short section, and I'll stop the video for you. You'll think about what you just heard, and remember, it's best if you are reading the book along with me, actually letting your eyes slide across the same words I'm reading. And then say or write what you just read or heard in your own words, and keep it short. This is not meant to be super duper duper long. Page 53, Chapter 7. I pushed the heavy door open and walked into the library. The air in the library isn't like the air anywhere else. First, it's always cooler than the air outside. It feels like you're walking into a cellar on a hot July day, even if you have to walk up a bunch of stairs to get into it. The next thing about the air in the library is that no other place smells anything like it. If you close your eyes and try to pick out what it is you're sniffing, you're only going to get confused because all the smells have blended together and turned themselves into a different one. As soon as I got into the library, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I got a whiff of the leather on all the old books, a smell that got real strong if you picked one of them up and stuck your nose real close to it when you turned the pages. Then there was the smell of the cloth that covered the brand new books, the books that made a splitting sound when you opened them. Then I could sniff the paper, that soft, powdery, drowsy smell that comes off the pages in little puffs when you're reading something or looking at some pictures, a kind of hypnotizing smell. I think it's that smell that makes so many folks fall asleep in the library. You'll see someone turn a page, and you can imagine a puff of page powder coming up really slow and easy until it starts piling on the person's eyelashes, weighing their eyes down so much that they stay down a little longer after each blink, and finally making them so heavy that they don't come back up at all. Then their mouths come open and their heads start bouncing up and down like they're bobbing in a big tub of water for apples. And before you know it, whoop zoop sloop, they're out cold and their face thunks down smack dab on the book. That's the part that gets the librarians the maddest. They get real upset if folks start drooling in the books, and page powder or not, they don't want to hear no excuses. You gotta get out. Drooling in the books is even worse than laughing out loud in the library. And even though it might seem kind of mean, you can't really blame the librarians for tossing drooly folks out, because there's nothing worse than opening a book and having the pages all stuck together from somebody's dried up slobber. I opened my eyes to start looking for Miss Hill. She wasn't at the lending desk, so I left my suitcase with the white lady there. I knew it would be safe. I walked between the stacks to see if Miss Hill was putting books up. 3 doggone times I walked through the library, upstairs and down, and I couldn't find her. I went back up to the librarian at the lending desk. I waited until she looked up at me. She smiled and said, "Yes, would you like to retrieve your suitcase?" She reached under the desk. I said, "Not yet, ma'am. Could I ask you a question?" She said, "Of course, young man. How may I help you?" "I'm looking for Miss Hill." The librarian looked surprised. "Miss Hill? My goodness, hadn't you heard?" Uh-oh. That's number 16 of Bud Caldwell's Rules and Things for Having a Funner Life and Making a Better Liar Out of Yourself. That's one of the worst ones. Rules and Things number 16. If a grown-up ever starts a sentence by saying, "Haven't you heard?" Get ready, because what's about to come out of their mouth is going to drop you head first into a boiling tragedy. I'm going to pause there. Drop you head first into a boiling tragedy is what we call a metaphor. I'm not really going to pick somebody up and put them in a boiling pot. A tragedy is something that's super sad. So what Bud means here is that when an adult says, "Haven't you heard?" there's going to be something really sad that they're talking about after that. It seems like the answer to "haven't you heard" always has something to do with someone kicking the bucket, and not kicking the bucket in a calm, peaceful way like a heart attack at home in bed either. It usually is some kind of dying that will make your eyes buck out of your head when you hear about it. It's usually the kind of thing that will run you out of a room with your hands over your ears and your mouth wide open. Something like hearing that your grandmother got her whole body pulled through the wringer on a washing machine, or something like hearing about a horse slipping on the ice and landing on some kid you went to school with. I'm going to pause there. That doesn't make much sense when we think about the words. Kicking the bucket? Well, that's part of my self-monitoring. I want to ask myself, am I understanding this? Okay, he went up to the librarian, asked about Miss Hill, and then Miss Hill says, "Haven't you heard?" And all of a sudden, Bud is going into something about kicking the bucket. I can figure out all of those words. Kicking, the, and bucket are all words I know, but together they don't make as much sense as I want them to. So I can't really tell what's happening in my own words. And I'm not 100% sure that I really understand it, so I can't tell you the most important part. That's because kicking the bucket is an example of an idiom. An idiom is a phrase that people use to mean something different from what the words say. Here are some common English idioms, like "cat got your tongue" means "can't you speak?" "Snug as a bug in a rug" means warm and cozy. "Go the extra mile" means make an extra effort. If you have butterflies in your stomach, you're feeling nervous. To go down in flames means to fail spectacularly. And once in a blue moon means rarely. So let's just take one of those. I'm going to look at butterflies in my stomach. If I'm feeling nervous, I might say I have butterflies in my stomach. Now, if I say that, I don't mean there's really butterflies flying around in my stomach. I mean that my stomach feels all jumpy, as if there were butterflies in it. So if I don't know that that means I'm feeling nervous, then it might be really confusing to read. Before we go back and reread this section with a lovely idiom, "kicking the bucket," pause and write on this slide an example of an idiom that you know. Try to come up with one that's not on this page.